Chapter 1. The Terrible Pain. Los Angeles, California, United States of America, present day. A young man was sitting all alone in the dead of the night at a bus stop, silently staring at his small pocket diary as he kept writing on its pages. Dear Diary, as I sit here, I can't help but think about the great mysteries of our existence. What is this universe we live in? Why has this world been created? And what is the purpose behind it all? The cycle of life and death, a uniquely puzzling phenomenon. We are born, we live, and then we die, only for the process to repeat endlessly for all living creatures, from humans to the smallest insects. Sometimes I feel overwhelmed by the weight of these unanswerable questions. In a world so caught up in the day-to-day concerns of their personal lives, who has the time or urge to search the deeper meaning of it all? I, too, find myself consumed by my questions and my struggles, unable to find peace. My questions keep me up at night and make me curse my existence. I've shared them with no one, not even with Kitty. I have only shared them with my trusted friend, Dr. Morrison. To reveal these thoughts to others would surely mark me as mad, deranged. Better to carry this burden alone than to risk being cast out and misunderstood. The questions that haunt me are of a different nature entirely. Who am I, truly? What is my history, my origin? Why do I bear only the name Kurt, with no surname, no indication of a family or heritage? Am I even human, like everyone else? And why do the nightmares come? Why do I suffer this awful pain in my chest when the doctors assure me that I am perfectly fine? Why can I not think or function like a normal person? Why? All this, why only to me? Why? Mr. Kurt, I don't think that any other bus will be going to Beekfield after this one. Hearing the voice, Kurt stopped writing in his diary and looked in front of him. A passenger bus was standing on the road and its conductor was standing at its door, staring at him with complete disgust. If you had completed writing, then please, be kind enough to get on board, or else we can all wait till it gets published. Is it so, Mr. Kurt? Said the conductor with an evil and grudging smile. The passengers on the bus laughed out loud, and it struck Kurt like a sledgehammer. Kurt's right hand, in which he was holding a pen, was shaking slightly, and he was staring at the tall and thin conductor with mixed emotion of hate, anger, and disgust. When Kurt felt uneasiness in showing off the anger in his eyes, he lowered down his gaze onto the small pocket diary that he was holding in his left hand and in which he was writing just 4 seconds ago. Mr. Kurt, it is past midnight. Come on, get on the bus quickly, or we will leave you here, said the conductor, suddenly turning angry. Without making any noise, Kurt closed his diary and slipped it in his inner coat pocket and the pen in his upper pocket. He got up slowly. Walking towards the bus seemed heavier for him. He was reluctant to get on the bus, but it was his need. He went back home from school on this bus, every working day. This was the only bus he used to get on his way home, after he used to get free from his work at 11. The last bus, which went to the Beekfield locality. Kurt stepped into the bus and sat on a seat beside a window. The conductor gave the signal and the driver started the bus, moving through the busy roads of Los Angeles. Silently, Kurt stared out at the vehicles passing by and questioned himself. How happy they are. Just look at them. Going to their homes after a whole day of worry and work. Going to their homes to sleep peacefully. But look at me. I can't even sleep peacefully at night. Even my home gives no peace to me. Why am I so different from others? Why? Taking a deep breath, Kurt leant back on his seat and closed his eyes. He was very tired from the whole day's exhausting schedule. 26-year-old Kurt, a good-looking, tall guy, who always looked worried. He had a pale physique, but looked adorable. He had lovely green eyes which made him look extremely innocent. A clean-shaven face, well-combed hairs, and a not-so-expensive suit on his body. Those were the adjectives which described his look. He also looked like he was being tortured and punished every day. His face looked dull and painful every time. There were fewer moments in his life in which he had smiled, and even fewer were the people who possessed the power to bring smile on his face. Since the day he gained consciousness about good and bad in this world, he was desperately seeking the answer for one single question which was making him hollow from inside by each passing day. Who was he? Until date, he was unable to find it, unable to understand his real identity. When Kurt truly gained the knowledge of good and bad, he was about 7 or 8 years old. During that period, he was in an orphanage in Oakland, and the caretaker of the orphanage had told him that he was found on the stairs outside the orphanage when he was just 1.5 years old. He remained in that orphanage till he was 14 years old. Living there seemed mysterious to him. He felt very lonely there. No friends, no relatives. Poor Kurt, all alone. Moreover, everybody there, excluding the other orphans, behaved strangely. Even the head of the orphanage, a middle-aged nun, behaved quite puzzlingly. Every day, a thorough checkup of Kurt's body was conducted. Everything done by him was written and kept in record. His eating habits, his sleeping habits, his hobbies, his topics of conversations, his bathing schedule, even his excreting timetables were observed and kept in record. It was very much pathetic for a kid of 14 to keep going through all of it. And then there was that terrible and unbearable pain which he occasionally used to feel in the left portion of his chest. The pain, his only companion since his childhood. The doctors initially used to think of it as angina, but later this theory was ruled out. Kurt was perfectly all right and no illness or disorder was found in him, ever. But the pain still used to arise. It wasn't frequent, but it also didn't have any certain fixed time. It could start anytime, anywhere. The unbearable pain used to throb only for few minutes, but those few minutes were like a devastating nightmare, full of excruciating pain and primal screams. Kurt hated it from the core of his heart, and it wasn't just about the pain he felt. During those few minutes, he heard voices which he had never heard, saw things which he had never seen, and felt sensations which he had never felt in his entire, pathetic life. It was quite agonizing for him to remain in the orphanage. Sometimes, it seemed to him that he was some sort of experiment to the nun which she carefully used to observe. He was fed up, and so, one day, he ran away. Ran away from the orphanage. Ran away from his cursed life there. Ran away from his cage. Ran away to freedom. To Los Angeles. He was 15 then, and never looked back to Oakland after that. In Los Angeles, he used to roam here and there, for work, for money, for food, for sympathy, and soon met a kind-hearted physician, Dr. James Morrison, a short guy with slightly bald head, who lived in downtown Los Angeles. He helped Kurt in all respects. He helped him with his further education, taught him skills, and prepared him to face the evil world. He became a father figure to Kurt. But even Dr. Morrison was unable to cure Kurt's terrible chest pain. Kurt still remembered those words clearly which Dr. Morrison used to tell about the chest pain. It looks like something is blocked, near your heart. Something is compressed in your nerves. I can't understand. You are unique, Kurt. It's really amazing. I had never seen a thing like this. You have no disease, nothing, but still it comes. It's amazing. Now, the pain was a part of Kurt's life. He was trying to live with it, but always failed to do so. And therefore, he, from the bottom of his heart, wanted the pain to perish forever. Kurt was now working as a physics teacher in Ebenezer School of Higher Education in Los Angeles. It was operated and run by a gorgeous, 23-year-old girl, Catherine Ebenezer. People fondly called her Kitty. She was the only child of an American billionaire businessman, Gucci Ebenezer. Kitty was very beautiful and extremely charming. She loved Kurt very much. Kurt loved her back, and she was the only person for whom he was trying to live his cursed life. Kurt taught in the school during the day and evenings as well. Evenings were dedicated to the poor kids who had no money to have the privilege of education. Kitty remained with Kurt in the school till the last hours. Since her huge mansion was just beside the school, she had no problem working late nights in the school, but Kurt had to go to the bus stand from where he used to catch the last bus for Beekfield. Kitty always insisted that she would provide a driver and a car for him, but he politely used to reject her offer. Kitty's parents, Gucci and Elizabeth Ebenezer, lived in New York City. She lived alone in her mansion, but yes, there were maids for her care and guards for her security. Kurt had never mentioned his chest pain to Kitty. He didn't want her to get worried. He loved her smiling face, her blue eyes, her brownish-black hair, her red lips. He loved her very much and didn't want to see her in a state of worry or sadness. The bus stopped in Beekfield. It was a huge locality, situated in uptown Los Angeles, surrounded and filled with dense woods. Houses were made at different distances between those woods. All the houses there looked alike. It was almost impossible to differentiate between the houses there. Residents recognized their houses by its location in the woods and by the help of address plates in front their houses. There was a significant distance between any two houses, and Kurt's house was located at the very end of the Beekfield locality. There were narrow pavements, made of stones, proceeding towards the houses from the main road. Kurt got off the bus, and it zoomed off. The conductor didn't even care to check if Kurt had gotten off the bus safely or not. Kurt let out a deep sigh and looked towards the narrow pavements and the dense trees on both sides. Lamp posts were lighting the way, but there was pitch-black darkness in those woods. Kurt started to walk towards his house quickly, as if he was afraid that something would bounce out of the woods any moment and kill him. His eyes were fixed on the horizon, and he was breathing deeply. His heart was beating louder and faster. Suddenly, he heard the rustle of leaves in the orchard, and his heart leapt with fear. Kurt seemed sure that the rustling wasn't caused by any human. He was sure that something was there, in the woods, looking at him, preying on him. God! Some sort of horrible creature. An ogre, or a vampire, or a tiger, or even a werewolf could be there, prowling, crouching, getting ready to attack and tear him to pieces. Struck with uncontrollable fear, Kurt broke into a sprint, without looking back, without even caring about anything else. He just wanted to reach his house as fast as he could. House number 78 was now within his vision, and he desperately wanted to reach there. His legs were shaking, but he managed to maintain his speed and soon reached the door of house number 78, his residence. Swiftly, he took out the keys, opened the lock first and then the door, and got in. Before closing the door from inside, he looked out into the darkness of the woods. Nothing was there. No one. But Kurt was sure that something was there, hiding, waiting. There were times when he had seen people spying on him, bloodthirsty werewolves staring at him from distant bushes. It was horrible. It always was. Kurt closed the door and locked it from inside. He turned around, his back still sticking to the door, and took a deep breath, trying to relax and calm down his increased heartbeat and breath. His was a very small house which had 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, a drawing room, 1 bathroom, and 1 washroom. Kurt lived alone in the house. He used to leave for school at 6 in the morning and return at 11:30 at night, sometimes past midnight. So he used to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner in the school with Kitty. Therefore, kitchen was of no use to Kurt, but it did have utensils for daily use. A coffee machine and a small fridge which contained cans of Pepsi, some stale pizza slices, pastries, and some chocolates. Kurt's bedroom had a small bed at one corner, a study table with a recliner and a chair. There was one more table with a laptop, an alarm clock, and a small photo frame on it. A frame of books was also kept beside the table along with a closet. Kurt walked into the room. He kicked off his shoes and sat on his bed. After removing his socks and his clothes, he took out his towel from the closet and went into the attached bathroom to take a bath. The water falling over his body from the shower was warm, and he was feeling relaxed. While wiping the water droplets from his face, he was staring into the mirror on the wall in front of him. He seemed so normal, so common, but yet, he was getting a strange feeling. He felt as if he was staring at someone else, someone who was not Kurt, someone who was whispering something in his ears. Someone else, silently whispering back to him. The time is coming. Soon. Very soon. Kurt almost jumped with panic as his mobile phone in his bedroom suddenly started ringing. God, it's only my phone ringing, Kurt said to himself, trying to calm down. He turned off the shower, wrapped the towel around his waist, and came out of the bathroom. Before walking towards his ringing phone, Kurt took out a loose t-shirt from his closet and wore it. He looked at the screen of his mobile phone. It was an unknown number. Yes, Kurt here, he said, answering the call. Nobody answered from the other side. Hello, Kurt said again. Still no answer. Hello, is anybody going to speak? And please, I don't like jokes if this is one. Kurt tried to sound tough. Okay, fine, if you aren't going to speak, I'm going to hang up, he said, and it was then when he heard a very feeble, tired, old masculine voice, Kurt. Kurt felt surprised. It was that voice. It felt so familiar. Who's this? He whispered with eagerness. I am sorry, very sorry, my son, came the feeble voice which now had broken into small sobs. Kurt felt a rush of blood and heat in his whole body. He was shaking with surprise and shock. Who is this? His voice again turned stern. I am your culprit. I am the man who left you in that orphanage. The man on the other side was sobbing hysterically. How did you get my number? Who are you? What are you talking about? Kurt demanded. They are searching for me like wild wolves, Kurt, and they will kill me if I am caught, the man said between his sobs. Who? Kurt asked, breathing heavily. I must meet you before they find me. Must tell you the truth, Kurt. They are watching you, every time and every day. I will meet you tomorrow, son. I must run away from here too. His sobs had stopped now and he sounded vigilant. Suddenly, he broke into furious coughs. Who are they? Kurt tried to ask in between the man's coughs. Who are chasing you? Hello. Hello. But there was no reply. Instead, the line got disconnected. A long beep went on which pierced through Kurt's mind, and he put his phone down with trembling hands, thinking about the call. Who was this old man? He seemed so familiar, and was terribly afraid. And why was he calling me son? Was he, my father? Who are behind him? Kurt looked out of the window, into the deep darkness of the woods. There was a creepy silence outside the house, as if no creature, big or small, was moving. As if all of them were silent, afraid of something else, something bigger, mightier, horrible, waiting in the bushes. Silently and carefully, Kurt closed the windows and locked them from inside. Then he wore his pajamas and walked towards his study table. There were various books on physics by various authors lying on it. There were also some other books like Werewolves, Myth or Reality, Ancient Egypt, Historical Journey of Werewolves, Egyptian Pharaohs and Rulers, The City of Pyramids, and Unanswered Incidents Related to Werewolves. Kurt picked up Unanswered Incidents Related to Werewolves and got on his bed. There were some painkillers and medicines on the table. The photo frame on the table contained the picture of a very beautiful girl, smiling. She was Catherine Ebenezer. Putting himself inside the blanket, Kurt adjusted the pillow vertically and leant on it. He placed the book on his chest, opened it, and started reading it. He went on reading about various encounters of humans and werewolves, about their attacks, their sightings. Werewolves were generally sighted in the area which had dense parks or forests, or even dense trees. Kurt was very much tired from the whole day's work, so he didn't notice himself starting to doze off while reading the book. His hold on the book went on loosening as he started to drift into a deep sleep. For the first few minutes, he sniffed, tried to keep his eyes open, fixed on the book, but soon he slipped into a deep sleep and started taking deep breaths. His eyes were closed now, body relaxed, and the book lying on his chest. He was sleeping peacefully and slept like that for about an hour or so and then felt something pricking inside his chest. While sleeping, he rubbed his chest with the book and turned to the right side. But the pricking continued and soon it made him open his eyes widely. The pricking sensation in his chest vanished all of a sudden. Kurt placed the book beside his pillow, but was still in a lying position. Everything was silent except the tick-tock of the alarm clock. Kurt didn't get up to see the time in it. He rubbed his chest again. Everything seemed to be normal. There was no pricking sensation in his chest now. Kurt opened his mouth to yawn, but instead of the yawn, a loud and painful shout came out of it, and the reason behind it was the terrible pricking pain that had started again, all of a sudden, in his chest. He jumped up like a spring, screaming loudly. He pressed at his left ribs as hard as he could. I can't tolerate this pain. This terrible pain. He just wanted the pain to go away, somehow, anyhow. The pain, which was throbbing in his chest, just below his heart. It felt as if something was desperately trying to tear his heart apart and get out of it. Kurt's jaws were stiff. His whole body was now sweating badly and his legs were shaking fervently. Sitting on his bed, he shouted with pain and agony. His vision fell upon his phone, which was on the table, placed in a corner of his room. I must call Dr. Morrison, yes. He got off his bed, but couldn't stand. His legs started shaking even more badly, and he fell down on the floor. His legs were unable to lift his own weight, and just then, the pain throbbed once again, this time in a more piercing way. Damn, it's increasing. Lying on the floor, he shouted loudly, while his hands rubbed his chest vigorously. With a lot of effort, Kurt dragged his body towards the phone. He was crawling on the floor. When he reached the table, he tried to stand, but couldn't, so he overturned the table and the phone fell upon his back. He grabbed it and dialed a number. Then he put the phone on speaker and started to rub and press the left portion of his chest with other hand. Come on, Doc. Come on. He moaned as the ring went on. His eyes looked at the alarm clock on the study table near his bed. He was unable to see it clearly. It showed 2:30. His vision was also getting hazy now. Just then, the ringing on the other side stopped, and a sleepy masculine voice said, "Hello." Kurt recognized the person on the other side. Tom, Tom. He managed to speak through his tightened jaw, while the pain in his chest continued to throb. Kurt. Tom's voice sounded worried as he asked. Tom, Kurt managed with a lot of labor. It's the pain again, Tom. Damn. Send Dr. James, please. Kurt. Oh, Jesus. I'm coming with Dad. Don't worry. We're coming, just now. And the line got disconnected. A long beep went on, and it seemed to be echoing everywhere, piercing through Kurt's brain, hitting it like a sledgehammer. Kurt threw the phone away as the pain throbbed again, increasing in intensity. He arched his body due to immense pain and clutched his chest with both his hands. He started to hit his chest like a savage gorilla, rubbed his chest vigorously, but all was in vain. Tears flowed out from his reddened eyes. Shrieking with unbearable pain, he tore off his t-shirt. The area of his chest, just below the heart, was getting blood red. The nerves there were distending, as if trying to burst and splash out the blood flowing in them. It was getting intolerable with every increasing second. Now his vision turned even more hazy, and that too, quickly, very quickly. In no time, the only thing he was watching was darkness. Pitch black darkness around him. And then it came. The flood of faces and events. Faces he had never ever seen. Events he had never ever witnessed. Never ever in his whole life. He was in the middle of a desert, which was spread all around in every direction, miles away, and it was moving away, rapidly, from his vision, and then there were pyramids, huge ones, and Kurt's vision stopped at one pyramid. There were the stairs, and then a stone door, which led to a triangular corridor, and inside it was a huge room in which an enormous serpent was hissing loudly. Its eyes were shining with anger. Then a sphinx came, a large one, whose human head was smiling cunningly over Kurt. Then suddenly, strong wind started to blow, and the sphinx, the serpent, the pyramid, everything exploded and turned into huge dunes of sand. Kurt wriggled with immense pain as the visions continued. He was now watching two large, ancient armies battle each other. They were killing, tearing, shouting, and abusing each other, and amongst them someone's or something's terrible roar was echoing. Everybody there was afraid of it, and all of a sudden, all the soldiers in both the armies started to turn into savage, bloodthirsty werewolves, who were now trying to attack Kurt and tear him apart. Kurt shouted for help, and his fingers desperately tried to dig into the floor. Then something compelled the werewolves to run away. It was a high-pitched shriek of someone or something. It made Kurt tremble with fright, and he saw a huge, 8-foot, horrifying demon with long claws and two long curled horns on his forehead, roaring and shrieking. The demon was menacingly walking towards Kurt. Trembling with fear and pain, Kurt tried to crawl back, but he was unable to do so because his body wasn't responding to his mind. All of a sudden, a long sword emerged from nowhere and pierced the chest of that demon. The demon exploded into grains of sand. The sword fell into the desert. Nobody was there now. A strong wind was blowing. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning flashed in the sky, and an old man appeared roaring. He was wearing a long robe, and in his right hand was a staff, a long wooden staff. The old man was very furious, and he pointed his staff at Kurt. A bolt of lightning shot from it and hit him. Kurt yelled loudly as a burning sensation filled his body, and his pain throbbed even more strongly. Kurt roared, trying to avoid everything happening to him. His mouth was wide open, saliva dripping as tiny droplets from it. His eyes, wide open, but were unable to see actual things around him. He was immersed deep into the nightmare, the terrible visions, which were haunting him as always, throwing him into the deep abyss of pain and agony. And all of a sudden, the old man vanished, the wind stopped, and everything became silent except the pain. A beautiful woman, clad in ornaments, was walking towards Kurt, waving seductively. Kurt froze with unbearable pain at that same instant. It started raining, heavily, but instead of water, blood was falling. Red blood, raining heavily, everywhere. The woman, wet with blood, came near Kurt and kissed him on the lips, passionately. The immense pain turned Kurt's body numb. He was unable to feel anything. The woman continued kissing him, and slowly, very slowly, Kurt crawled out into the world of darkness, silence, and rigidity. He was lying on the floor, motionless, as if he was dead.